coming up.
This was the movie business. Kids killing their parents.
The murder case the whole world is talking about.
Neither were abused. They've made that up.
Why so many people now say the Menendez brothers...
I hope they're gonna get out.
...aren't villains, they're victims.
I believe Erik and Lyle Menendez.
That's next on 60 Minutes.
Back when it happened, there was a simple explanation to go with the headlines: greed. Lyle and Erik Menendez had shot dead their wealthy parents in the family's Beverly Hills mansion to get their hands on a $14 million inheritance. Of course, the brothers denied it. In court, they said they killed because their evil father had sexually abused them. But they weren't believed. Found guilty, the pair was sentenced to life behind bars without parole. Now, though, 35 years later, there's not only new evidence, but enormous support from armchair detectives around the world, convinced the Menendez brothers really are victims, not villains. So, should they be freed? Their crime might be 35 years old.
Life sentences for the 1989 murder of their parents.
But thanks to Netflix, social media and TikTok,
Netflix is going to be releasing a new documentary on the case.
Everyone is talking about Lyle and Erik Menendez.
They're stone-cold killers.
They felt like they had no other way out.
I want Lyle and Erik out.
Are they cold-blooded killers who should die in prison, or victims of vile sexual abuse and cover-up at the hands of their parents? Now, for the first time since going to jail, they have a real hope of getting out.
I'm someone that believes in second chances, and I really believe in them.
Not only has their fate lit up the internet, but it has pitted lawyer against lawyer.
They were not abused, and they are continuing with the charade and lying about it. They really should remain in prison.
You do believe they should be out?
I do, because I think that the legal system has to have a path for redemption and rehabilitation when there is evidence that those things are there.
Don't kill my parents. Pardon me? Don't kill my parents. Were they shot? Yes. They were shot? Yes.
It was the 20th of August, 1989, when Lyle Menendez made this hysterical emergency call to 911.
Oh! No.
The then 21-year-old and his 18-year-old brother Erik claimed they'd just discovered the bodies of their father, Jose, and mother, Kitty, in the family home. The couple had been mercilessly executed by shotgun. The scene in their Beverly Hills mansion was horrific.
There was brain matter and blood dripping from the ceiling. The bodies were, in terrible shape. Shotguns are, do horrible damage to a human body.
35 years ago, journalist and author Robert Rand was one of the first to cover the story he's been obsessed with ever since.
Everybody thought this was the perfect all-American family. And behind the gates of that mansion, it was a very different story.
The murders were first investigated as a mafia hit. Lyle and Erik, claiming their father's business dealings, made him a target of the underworld. But in a shock development, 6 months after the shootings, police arrested the brothers after a tip-off. In true Hollywood style, their therapist had recorded their confessions. Even so, Lyle and Erik pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder. How big a splash did these murders make in Beverly Hills at that time and across the United States?
The story blew up. It became a sensation, not only in the States, but around the world. Murder in Beverly Hills. This was the movie business. Kids killing their parents. Very wealthy family. And people were following this case like a soap opera, like a novella.
For police and the prosecution, the pair's motive for the gruesome double murder was greed, getting their hands on their $14 million inheritance. But at trial, Lyle and Erik made shocking accusations, claiming they had both been victims of terrible sexual abuse at the hands of their father. Both first targeted when they were just 6 years old. And their mother, they claimed, knew but failed to protect or help them.
Tell me as clearly as you can why you murdered your parents that night.
First thing that comes to mind is terror. I was so afraid. A few days before, I had said to myself, I am never going to let my father touch me again. After I told Lyle that it had been continuing on, I said to myself, I'm never going to let him touch me again. And just before the shootings, my dad told me to get to my room and that he would be there in a minute, and he was going to come up and there was going to be sex, and it was like an explosion in my mind.
You killed your father, who was molesting you. Why did you kill your mother?
On Thursday night before, in one of the explosions, I was running downstairs and I was crying, and my mother was on the couch and she had been drinking, and she said, "What's wrong with you?" And I said, "Nothing, nothing, you wouldn't understand." And she said, "Oh, I understand. What do you think, I'm stupid?" And she told me that she knew.
In that time, I didn't separate. I knew my mother and my father. It was just adrenaline and fear and anger. I
lost control.
There is no explanation.
Have you forgiven yourself?
I don't think it's possible.
It was on learning his 18-year-old brother was still being raped that Lyle confronted their father and threatened to expose him. It was 3 days before the murders, an act of defiance that triggered a fear in Lyle and Erik they had to kill or be killed, as Lyle explained in this phone interview with American Dateline.
A person like my father is not going to allow you to just take something that will ruin his life that he has so carefully crafted. He's not going to.
And Jose Menendez told them, day after day after day, I will kill you if you ever try to get away.
Do you believe that Jose Menendez would have killed his sons?
I believe he was totally capable of killing his sons.
Do they still believe that all these years later?
Well, I'm not going to convey confidential attorney-client communications, but that is absolutely the defense. They had been told for years if they breathed a word of the sexual abuse by Jose Menendez, he would kill them and he would kill who they told.
As their appeal lawyer, Cliff Gardner, acknowledges, convincing the jury the brothers killed out of fear was challenging when presented with the brutality of their fatal attack. The sons had riddled their unsuspecting and unarmed parents with shotgun pellets, while Jose and Kitty were watching TV. The hard thing to understand for many people is that in that very moment, did Erik and Lyle fear for their life? In the moment where they reloaded and shot their mother point blank in the face, did they fear that they were going to be killed?
Sure, and what they did was criminal. The question is, was it murder or was it manslaughter? And under state law, under the imperfect self-defense doctrine, the law recognizes that people who have been battered for years and years and years can react differently, inappropriately, but it's not murder.
But with the Menendez brothers' lives on the line, the jury could not deliver a unanimous verdict, evenly divided between voting for murder and manslaughter.
All of the women had voted for manslaughter. All of the men had voted for murder. And every single man told me after the first trial, well, a father would never do that to his sons. And so that was the problem. It was really divided along gender lines, and the men just wouldn't budge.
A retrial was ordered, but this time much of the sexual abuse evidence was excluded by the judge. And with no other real defence for their depraved crimes, the brothers were found guilty of first-degree murder. They escaped the death penalty, but were sentenced to life in prison without parole.
I believe the second trial was a complete miscarriage of justice. I don't think it was a fair trial. They were determined that they were going to convict the Menendez brothers, and they did.
But now, as you'll see, there's new explosive evidence to support Erik and Lyle's claims.
That's the man here. that raped me.
How critical a moment in time is this for the Menendez brothers?
They will, for the first time, have a shot at getting out of prison.
Erik and Lyle Menendez were sentenced to life in prison, never to be released, nearly 35 years ago for the murder of their parents, Jose and Kitty. From the time of their arrest in 1990, the question has been not did they do it, but why did they do it?
There were two different explanations for this homicide. One was the explanation the state offered. These were spoiled rich kids from Beverly Hills that wanted to inherit the money early, and so they killed their parents. The other position was that these kids had been sexually abused since they were 6 and 8 years old.
According to their lawyer, Cliff Gardner, it was clear the brothers had been abused by their father and they killed out of fear. But it was a defence the court and society at the time would not accept.
If the Menendez brothers had been the Menendez sisters, they would have been convicted of manslaughter. And that would be the understanding today, that that's the appropriate sentence. It's not that what they did wasn't criminal, it's that it wasn't murder.
Journalist and now Menendez advocate Robert Rand believes no matter their crime, the brothers deserve compassion. Do you believe that that level of sexual abuse suffered by the brothers is excuse, reason enough for that terribly violent double murder?
No, there's never an excuse. There's never a reason. You can't get around the elephant in the room. Erik and Lyle Menendez killed their parents. It was a very brutal murder. Shotguns are horrible weapons to kill somebody with. Their crime was terrible. But if you understand the background of the family, then you have a different attitude about their punishment.
But back in the 90s, the brothers' defence was viewed as a fabrication, concocted by their lawyers to get Erik and Lyle off. Now, a letter written, it's believed months before the murders, by Erik to his cousin, has been discovered and seemingly proves the alleged abuse was not a fabrication.
I've been trying to avoid Dad. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in. I'm afraid. He's crazy.
Erik's cousin Andy died 15 years ago, but in a fact-finding mission, Robert Rand was invited to look through his personal papers. The result was extraordinary.
And within 15 minutes, I found that letter. And as soon as I read that paragraph, I thought to myself, this could have a major impact on the case.
When you read that letter, what was your reaction to it?
I had chills down my spine. I literally got chills. I thought this could form the basis of a new evidence claim for purposes of habeas.
It was so convincing for Cliff Gardner, he has since lodged a habeas petition, seeking the court to overturn Erik and Lyle's murder convictions based on new evidence. He's relying on the letter and another explosive discovery, again uncovered by Robert Rand.
30 years ago, I started hearing rumors that there was some sort of nefarious connection between Jose Menendez when he was at RCA Records and the boy band Menudo.
Jose Menendez was a record executive at the time, which it now appears gave him license to molest former Menudo band member Roy Rossello.
I've heard so much about you.
Oh, happy to meet you in person. Come on in.
It took years of digging by Robert, but finally last year, in this US Peacock streaming documentary, Roy confided when he was 13 years old, he'd been raped by Jose Menendez.
That's the man here that raped me. This guy, that's the pedophile.
The second bit of new evidence, how compelling is that for you?
Roy's declaration makes clear that Jose Menendez raped him twice, raped him anally twice. So, would it have been significant? Well, it certainly would not have permitted the prosecutor to argue that Jose Menendez wasn't the type of man to rape a young boy. That argument would have been out the window.
You have a prepaid call from
Erik Menendez.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Eric.
Good afternoon, Bob.
It's a new allegation of abuse outside the family they hope will change everything for the Menendez brothers. But Erik's response from jail is subdued.
How do you feel about that?
I, frankly, to be honest, I feel horrible. It's sad to know that there was another victim of my father.
There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about what happened and wish that I could take that moment back or change what happened. But it's hard to live with that.
Do you feel remorse?
Tremendous remorse.
While most of the extended Menendez family want Erik and Lyle to be released, there is one family member who is adamant the brothers are sociopaths who should die in prison. Kitty's brother, Milton Anderson, now 90, speaking through his lawyer, Kathleen Cady, wants justice for his murdered sister.
Of course, he's aware of the various allegations regarding sexual abuse, and Mr. Anderson firmly believes that that did not occur and that they've made that up. It's his belief that that is all a lie.
But LA County District Attorney George Gascon doesn't need to be persuaded by new evidence. He's recommended the brothers be resentenced based solely on their impeccable prison records, length of time behind bars, and their young age at the time of their brutal crimes.
Even if they were molested, that's not a good enough reason to murder your parents, right?
But does that mean too, then, that you don't believe that they were acting in self-defence, that they feared for their lives, that they had to kill or be killed?
Yes, I don't believe that the self-defense argument is one that I believe in. Again, and that's a personal opinion, right? And certainly the jury didn't buy that either.
But you do believe they should be out?
I do, because I think that they're, in my opinion, a legal system has to have a path for redemption and rehabilitation when there is evidence that those things are there.
While not unanimous, there is a groundswell of people who believe the time is right to let the brothers out. How critical a moment in time is this for the Menendez brothers?
Well, it's certainly the first positive development in the case for probably 30 years. And if the court agrees to resentence, then they will, for the first time, have a shot at getting out of prison.
But as close as freedom might taste, nothing is certain. A newly elected DA takes over next week, and he's already flagged a desire to review the current recommendation for resentencing.
I believe that the judges are going to make the brothers jump through a number of hoops. They're not just going to walk out as easily as it sounded 2 weeks ago. Well, I believe they will eventually be let out, but it could be another 6 months, 8 months. It could be a year until they get out. They should be let out. They should be sent home to their family. This case needs to end.
This week's 60 Minutes podcast, Extra Minutes, discusses whether the Menendez brothers deserve to be freed.
So dark when you pull it apart is kind of intriguing, isn't it? It goes against type.
It really does. And I mean, that's what made it like one of the original sort of Hollywood trials, right? Like it was broadcast around the world.
That's Extra Minutes, available now on your favourite podcast apps.